Hello, I am William Gerstein, board certified immigration and nationality attorney with 30 years of experience. And the purpose of this video is to help prepare you for a USCIS interview for a marriage-based green card. What we're going to talk about today is going to be in three parts. Part one is what original documents do you need to bring with you? Part two is what evidence can we provide that justifies the relationship? And then part three is exactly what do you expect from the time you walk in the door until the time that you leave. The first thing to talk about is what evidence you're going to bring with you. And this is generally your identity documents, copies of which you would have sent with your original filings. For example, birth certificates, marriage certificates, divorce certificates, passports, criminal records, visas, things of this nature. The purpose of it is so that they can compare the originals to the copy and note that the copy is a true copy of the original, and then it would be returned to you. The next thing that we will talk about, and really the heart of the discussion, is the evidence of relationship. Now, all of this evidence can be uploaded electronically into your file, and it's a good idea to do that before the interview so that the officer has a chance to look it over. I will tell you each of the suggestions that our office has come up with, as well as some commentary that I can give you related to it. The first thing is that both spouses must have a driver's license or state ID with the correct address on it where they actually live. This is something that comes up all the time because even U.S. citizens that we work with have an address from a prior apartment where they used to live that they just never bothered to update it. Most state laws require people to update their addresses right away. And we know that the government does background checks, and if you have different addresses on your documents, you're already starting from behind. This is something that you should try to get as early on in the process as possible. The second thing is having a joint bank account. Now, I realize that these days it might not be the same as when I married, that everything was joint, but people would be well served if they have what I like to call a household operating account. This would be a bank account that you would use together as a married couple in order to pay normal household expenses like rent or mortgage, grocery shopping, utility bills, gasoline, things of this nature, that you each figure out what you're going to contribute to it, and you use it for these things on a regular basis, both of you. And obviously, the evidence would be the statements that you can download. The more activity that's there, the better off that you are. The next is filing joint tax returns. Married filing jointly, of course, shows the greatest commitment to filing taxes as a couple. Other option would be married filing separately, which generally is going to be more expensive. Now, the version of the taxes that you get from your tax preparer, such as H&R Block, is not nearly as valuable as the tax transcripts that you can download for free by making an account at irs.gov. These tax return transcripts show exactly what numbers were indicated, when it was filed, how it was filed, meaning the relationship, such as married filing jointly, and who were the filers. This will go a long way in convincing the immigration officer that your evidence is legitimate. Next, if you have credit cards together, or if one of you has a credit card and makes the other joint user, you can copy the two credit cards side by side and bring or upload several months worth of statements. Next would be joint occupation of properties. This would mean being on a residential lease together. If you own a home together, you would be on the deed together. Even if one person owns the home and you were married at the time of the purchase, you probably are both on the mortgage. Most counties and municipalities have websites where you can look up this information about yourself and download it directly. The next item that we recommend are estate planning documents, such as wills, trusts, other powers of attorney, that allow one spouse to make legal, financial, or healthcare decisions for the other. A young couple without children often isn't going to have this, and not every single thing on our list is necessary. You try to get as many things as you practically can in your life to paint the broad picture that you are together as a married couple. The next item that we suggest are utility bills, and often utility companies will only do it in one name or the other, so that's fine. If one of you has it for the water bill and the other has it for the electric bill, another way you can do it is you could have Mrs. Smith in care of Mr. Smith, for example, on there. It's not really joint, but it sort of looks like that. And I also suggest that you are on the same cell phone plan, because then you would be able to print the invoice or the bill and highlight the two cell phone numbers. Now, often people don't even think about this, that they just have their cell phone plans separately, but you might even save money by having it together, aside from the fact that it would look better for you to have this additional document together. Next can be joint business investments or company ownership. So, for example, did you establish a company together? Are you on an LLC together as managers of your business? Well, there's all sorts of documents like articles of organization, bylaws, annual updates, and other filings that you would be able to show if this applies to you. Also, making another person the beneficiary of life insurance or an investment such as an IRA or a 401k is also very helpful. Oftentimes, people have these things already in place and they get married and they never even think about changing them from their mom or their sister to their wife or husband. This is a good time to think about that. And unless you purposely want it to be with somebody other than your spouse, you should be putting your spouse as the beneficiary and obtaining documentation of that in order to be able to upload. Think about any kind of accounts where you might have applied for credit together, like leasing a car, buying furniture at Rooms to Go where you pay over time, or maybe electronics where you pay over time at Best Buy. If you're applying together for credit in that fashion, you can show that. That's also very helpful. Just like the driver's licenses, the auto registration is another thing that you would want to show together, in the sense that one person has their car registered at the marital address and the other person has their car registered at the marital address, and you would just copy the two auto registrations side by side. Insurance. This is definitely something where there's plenty of opportunity. Different types of insurance can be auto, home, health, dental, vision, renter's insurance. Many corporate apartment complexes require people to obtain renter's insurance, so automatically there you would have that together. And as far as auto insurance goes, I often hear people say, well, she doesn't have a license yet, or he doesn't drive, or something of that nature. Now, regardless of immigration, if you're a married couple, whether both of you drives or only one of you drives, the auto insurer needs to know that you're married and you're living in the same household, because certain protections apply to the other people, even if they're not a driver. So please make sure you update that and you get evidence of that. For people that share expenses but don't have a bank account together, you could show Apple Pay or Zelle transactions between the two of you in order to show how you handle your budgeting. Now, the best, if it exists, evidence is if you have a child together. If you do, just simply produce the child's birth certificate with both parents' names on it. If the wife is pregnant, you can show things such as medical records or sonogram photos, records for IVF or fertility treatments. All of these show that a couple is very serious. In addition, if you had some kind of formality to your wedding, rather than being married at the courthouse, then I could suggest that you produce the wedding invitation. You can produce contracts from vendors such as the florist and the DJ or whoever else that you used. You can and should show photographs. We usually tell people to limit them to 50 and definitely show them in color so that they're more engaging to the person that's viewing it. The best photos are not ones of just a couple sitting on the couch, but of a couple that are engaged with other family and friends, or that they're obviously on vacation or at some sort of event or dressed up for some reason. My rule personally is that if you do not feel comfortable showing the photo to your grandmother, then don't show it to the immigration officer. Trips together. If you travel together, you take a vacation together, you can easily search your email for the flight reservation where both of your names will appear, or a cruise reservation, or anything else that you might have, like a hotel, Airbnb, rental car, anything of that nature. Traveling together definitely shows that you're residing together as a couple. If you have cats or dogs that you've adopted or that you purchased and you take to the vet, you can have both of your names attached to that. So that's another thing you can do. Also, social media can be very important. For example, on Facebook or Instagram, if you have an account and you post photos of yourselves as a couple, that means that you're holding yourselves out as a married couple to the entire world. So you want to take a screenshot where you could see the date that the post was made and that people did comment on it or like it. You don't have to show the comments, but you can at least see that people interacted with or were engaged with your photo. Joint memberships. Think about things like Costco, Sam's Club, BJ's, the gym, AAA, anything like that where you can have a membership together. Think about what documentation you could get of that, and you can show that as well. If you have cards that people have written to you, especially that they've mailed to you for certain occasions, like congratulations on your anniversary or things of that nature, those can be helpful. I would save the envelope, especially if it came from overseas. If you have an engagement ring or other major gift that you bought for the other person, you could show an appraisal, you could show a receipt, you could show that there's insurance for the jewelry. So all of these things help. And then you can show things like concert tickets that you bought together, amusement park tickets that you bought together. These things don't have as great a weight, but overall, you are trying to paint a broad picture that you are together as a married couple. So again, the earlier that you begin to work on these things, the better off you're going to be. If you start at the beginning, by the time that you get to your interview, you're going to feel like it's a breeze because you have everything laid out and perfectly arranged for the examiner so that you are making their life easier. In addition, by uploading it or having your lawyer upload it to the electronic account, it's already waiting there, as I said, for the immigration officer that will be interviewing you, and it's just that much less material that you need to bring into the office with you. Next, we're going to talk about what actually happens on the day of the interview. Okay, I like to tell people to dress business casual. For a man, that would mean a long sleeve button down shirt, pants that are not jeans or shorts, and shoes that are not sneakers or sandals, and then whatever's the appropriate business casual equivalent for women. So you would come to the immigration office, the immigration building, prepared with your printed appointment notice and photo ID, which are hopefully your driver's license or state ID. You will present this to the security guard outside who will review it, then admit you into the building. You will go through security just like in the airport. Sometimes you have to take off your shoes, so I suggest wearing socks. And when you get through security, you'll be led around to a front desk where you will check in, and they will scan your appointment notice, and they will either tell you that you will be called by name or they'll give you a ticket number, and there will be a monitor in the waiting room where you can watch for the ticket to be called. When you are called for your interview, you will both follow the officer back to their room, and probably they'll say, remain standing while I swear you in. Then you get sworn in. They'll ask for the appointment notice, they'll ask for the photo ID, and they'll ask you to have a seat. Generally, there are 3 pieces of paper that they're going to have you sign, which are totally normal. The first tells you of the penalties if you do not tell the truth, which can be a fine of $250,000 and or up to 5 years in prison. Everybody gets this notice and it's okay to sign it. The petitioner is the U.S. citizen or permanent resident that is initiating the case. The beneficiary is the foreign applicant who is applying for a green card. Another form that they may ask you to sign is acknowledgement that you will be granted conditional residency if your case is approved. So if this is a marriage case and you were married for less than 2 years at the time of the interview or approval, you're going to get a 2-year conditional card, and they're going to explain that in the 90 days before the 2 years from your approval, you have to file a petition called a I-751 to remove conditions on residency. And this mostly involves saving up the same sort of evidence that we just went over a few minutes ago. Finally, if you are attending the interview without the attorney that prepared the case, which again is not unusual, they may make you sign something just simply acknowledging that the attorney is not there and that you wish to proceed with the interview. So then the officer will get started with the interview. Oftentimes they'll do a mini biometrics of the beneficiary. So they'll have a webcam sitting on top of their monitor where they'll hold it out, take a picture of your face. Then you will see a little lit up blue box where they'll say, put your left finger on it, then put your right finger on it, takes your fingerprint. Again, this identifies you from the biometrics that they would have taken from you earlier. Then they will start the interview in earnest. Now, you need to think of the interview in 2 parts. There's the I-130 alien relative petition that the sponsor petitioner filed, and then there's the application for adjustment of status that the foreign beneficiary would have filed, and this all would have been, or often is, in the same package. For the petition, we have to prove that the petitioner is a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, that you are legally married, so we would show a marriage certificate, and if applicable, any prior divorce or death certificates from prior marriages. And we have to prove that there's a bona fide relationship. And again, that's all of the evidence that we spoke about. Now, both applications have a lot of background information, such as your name, your date, your place of birth, who are your parents, what's your marital history, who are your kids, if any, and where you've lived and worked for the past 5 years. So these are normal questions that you would get from either of the applications. So again, as I said, the examiner will start with the petitioner, where we have to prove you're a citizen or resident, you're legally married, and it's a bona fide relationship. So oftentimes the attorney, when filing the case originally, will file it with some evidence, even if it's just a bunch of photos, and then the evidence can be electronically supplemented thereafter or brought to the interview. In addition to reviewing that evidence and maybe asking questions about the evidence, the immigration officer, is going to expect the petitioner to speak about the relationship. So really what you want to do is be prepared to just talk casually for about 5 minutes, simply describing the first time that you laid eyes on your now spouse, up to what led to living together, getting married, and all of the dating in between. Now, they may stop you and ask you follow-up questions as you're speaking. They may ask the beneficiary certain questions while it's going on, but oftentimes they're going to be typing your answers and taking notes. And once they're satisfied with what they've heard and the evidence that they've seen, they'll say, this is enough, this is fine. And they will move along to the adjustment of status portion. This is for the foreign beneficiary. So generally, what do we have to prove? We have to prove that the person entered the U.S. legally and that there's nothing in their background that either makes them inadmissible or would make them deniable by discretion. And I'll explain what these things mean. So in the I-485 adjustment of status application, aside from all of the background information that is in there, there's about 85 questions that deal with any kind of possible immigration violation, any possible crime that any human being could have ever committed, and other related matters such as false claims to U.S. citizenship. So we have to prove that the beneficiary, came to the U.S. legally, and generally would already have sorted that out by submitting the I-94. And we have to make sure that there's nothing that makes them inadmissible. Simply answering yes to one of those questions doesn't make you inadmissible, but may lead to further questions. For example, it's common for somebody to admit that they have violated the terms of their non-immigrant status by having overstayed beyond the time that their tourist or student status or whatever it may be expired. And also whether they've worked without permission. It's common, again, in these cases that people have worked without permission. When you're being sponsored as an immediate relative, such as a spouse of a U.S. citizen, these things are not held against you. But if your petitioner is a permanent resident, then they are. So you must be very careful about this. Any kind of arrest has to be disclosed, and you have to bring the arrest report and the court disposition. Again, generally, these should have been uploaded ahead of time, and the officer will review the particulars of that matter and may ask some questions about it in order to determine that the person is still admissible. Now, discretionary means that you may check off all of the boxes, but you're just somebody that they just feel does not deserve permanent residency. And I can give you an example of that. Let's just say that one of the spouses has been arrested 3 or 4 times for domestic violence, and the police reports say that the victim was scratched and bruised and otherwise harmed, but all of the cases have been dismissed, so nothing is held against them. This is an example of where they can use their discretion. They can say, well, it's obvious that your spouse didn't want you to go to jail, so they dropped the charges against you, but you still did all of these things to him or her, and we don't feel that you're the type of person that deserves permanent residency at this time. So this is something to be aware of as well. Anyway, as they get through all of the eligibility questions and any follow-up discussion, we're led basically towards the end of the interview. At the end of the interview, any corrections to the application would have to be noted and acknowledged at that time. As the USCIS transitions to an electronic format, you're very likely to see an iPad in front of you where you will see all these changes and you'll be able to flip through them and make sure they're okay. At the end of the electronic document, you'll see a pink box, you tap it, and you can sign it with your finger or a stylus and press accept signature, and the document will go back to the examiner. At this point, we're at the end of the interview, and don't expect that the officer is going to say, you did great, you're approved, the green card will be in the mail. What you are likely to hear is something such as, I have a certain number of days to make a decision, or I have to review all of these documents in front of me, or I have to run background checks, or I have to review it with a supervisor, or they may say something like, you'll get my decision in the mail, or you may even get a document that says, we acknowledge that you were present for the interview today. Nothing is needed at this time, but your file is being held for further review, and we will let you know if there's something further that we need. I know this doesn't sound very friendly, but this is how all of the interviews end, and it's not unusual to see your approvals come through within the days and weeks following the interview. It's usually the I-130 approval first, and then the I-485 approval. This concludes our preparation of a marriage-based adjustment of status application and interview preparation. And I suggest that people watch this at the beginning of their case as well as just before their interview. And to get in touch with me, William Gerstein, visit us at our website, usaimmigrationlaw.com, where you can find all of our contact information. Thank you.